In the deadly shadow of the Sierra Madre Mountains, in the barren heart of Sinaloa, where the air itself feels heavy with fear and the law is just a forgotten, bitter joke, a name rose from anonymity. He didn't just build an empire, he built a cult. This isn't just a story about drugs, this is a cold autopsy on the rise of the man known as El Chapo, a phenomenon that should not exist. We are not walking on moonlit streets. We are in the desolate village of La Tuna, a cursed place where the sweet smell of opium is the permanent perfume of death. Here, in 1957, Joaquín Archivaldo Guzmán Loera was born. He had no privilege, no hope, only a destructive fire within him and an ambition that burned to the bone. His father, an opium farmer, taught him the deadly language of the poppy. His formal education ended not because he was foolish, but because the call of survival of the fetus demanded he learn from blood and dust. By age 15, he was already planting his own marijuana field. This wasn't farming, it was a declaration of war against his own destiny. He was raised by the cruelest teachers, the muddy streets, the cold mountains, and the need to dig graves for others just so he could live. He was a dangerous observer, noting every detail: how to buy a soul, how to carve a root, and how to use violence with surgical precision. He was a fast learner, and his mentor was the merciless criminal underworld. His desire to escape that pit of poverty led him to Guadalajara, a city that pulsed as the black heart of the Mexican drug trade. There, he met a figure just as dark, Miguel Angel Felix Gallardo, the godfather, the architect of organized crime. To Gallardo, El Chapo, Shorty, was just another disposable tool, one of many raw ambitions. He started as a driver, then a guard, carrying out the dirty work. But Chapo was no ordinary pawn. Behind his emotionless eyes was a cold calculator, weighing every life as either an asset or a liability. He was a battlefield strategist, mastering the logistics of the operation, the golden lifeblood of the cartel. Gallardo, with his old instincts, saw something disturbing in Chapo, not just brutality, but an almost mechanical efficiency. Chapo was soon trusted with logistics, responsible for shipments from Colombia to the US border, a job that demanded absolute precision because failure meant death. His reputation became a whisper of terror. If a shipment was late, the pilot became fertilizer. He didn't build his reputation on courage, but on terrifying efficiency. He was the vital connection to be respected, and that bridge was built on bones. But every empire, no matter how strong, is a myth waiting to crumble. The collapse came in 1989 with the arrest of Felix Gallardo. The centralized power exploded, creating a violent vacuum that had to be filled. This was the price El Chapo had been waiting for. Alongside his loyal partner, Hector Luis Palma Salazar, he seized the Pacific Corridor, the foundation for his new domain. From the rotting remains of the old cartel, a new entity was born, leaner, meaner, and far bloodier, the Sinaloa Cartel. Chapo understood he had to innovate or die. He didn't just use routes, he created an underground reality. He introduced sophisticated tunnels under the border, a dark engineering marvel that let the drugs flow undetected. His first tunnel in Arizona in 1990 was a declaration of victory, equipped with hydraulics, electricity, and ventilation. It wasn't a hole, it was a superhighway for crime. This was the blueprint for the future, a sign that he was building an underground empire. The path to the throne is always baptized in blood. The power vacuum triggered an unavoidable war. The Sinaloa Cartel's main enemy was the Tijuana Cartel, led by the Arellano Felix brothers. The fight for the Tijuana corridor turned the border into a hellscape that swallowed thousands of lives. The climax came in 1993. An assassination attempt on Chapo at the Guadalajara airport went wrong, killing Cardinal Juan Jesus Posadas Ocampo. The murder of a high-ranking clergyman was an unforgivable line to cross. The Mexican government, sleeping peacefully on its bed of bribes, was forced to wake up. The hunt for El Chapo began, fueled by public outrage and pressure from Washington. His face became an icon of brutality in the media. He was public enemy number one. Captured in Guatemala that same year, he was extradited and sentenced to 20 years in the maximum security prison, Puente Grande. For the world, this was the end of a criminal story. But for Guzman, prison was just a new, safer headquarters, an isolated branch office. Puente Grande, a prison nicknamed the Big Door because the door for corruption was wide open. Inside, Chapo's power didn't fade, it crystallized. His cell was a private suite, a place for secret parties and full access to lead his empire. He bought every guard, every warden, every official. The prison became a shield, protecting him from his enemies outside, a place where he could strategize without interruption. From behind bars he led, forming the Sinaloa Federation, which controlled most of the routes into the US. He was imprisoned, but his power had never been more absolute. Then, in 2001, as whispers of extradition to the US grew louder, Chapo decided to disappear. He didn't fight his way out. He escaped as a masterpiece of corruption, hiding in a dirty laundry cart, smuggled right through the main gate. The escape was a demonstration of superiority, a statement that his money could buy freedom from even the most secure fortress. Chapo's return was the golden dawn for the Sinaloa Cartel and the bloody dusk for Mexico. For 13 years, he consolidated his power with biblical cruelty. He declared total war, turning the border into a raging inferno. The Sinaloa Cartel evolved into an unstoppable criminal corporation dominating the global market. Their network stretched across continents. Forbes, the scorekeeper of power, was forced to acknowledge him. How did he survive? First, through extreme violence. Second, through a deep-rooted system of corruption controlling the police. And third, with a twisted Robin Hood myth, buying the loyalty of the people the government had forgotten. He became a walking ghost, proof that with limitless wealth and absolute cruelty, a man can become bigger than the law. El Chapo had climbed to the top of the criminal food chain, a king with a crown made of cocaine and blood. But every empire, no matter how strong, will eventually show its cracks, and feeling invincible is the deadliest poison for a king. For 13 years, El Chapo was an uncatchable shadow. Mexico endured the shame. The US saw him as an existential threat. This manhunt was a war against a myth. The DEA and the Mexican Marines, the last uncorrupted units, moved in secret. They used dark technology, wiretaps, drones, cell phone tracking. Slowly, the net began to tighten. In early 2014, a breakthrough. Communications led to Culiacan. The Marines launched dawn raids. In every house, they found his signature, secret doors under bathtubs, leading to a maze in the city's sewers. El Chapo had turned his own city into an underground fortress, but his narrow escapes showed he was cornered. He escaped time and again, crawling through the sewers, wet and naked, covered in filth. But he was pushed, forced to make mistakes. Finally, he fled to Mazatlan. In the early hours of February 22nd, 2014, the drama ended in silence. Without a single shot fired, Marines broke down a condominium door. They found him with his wife and daughters, the world's most wanted drug lord, arrested, looking weak and ordinary. The Mexican government would not be humiliated again. El Chapo was sent to Altiplano, a prison they claimed was impenetrable. They refused extradition, insisting they could hold this monster. But they forgot his money, his engineering genius, and the loyalty of his men. Less than 17 months later, on July 11th, 2015, the world was stunned. El Chapo was gone. In his cell, under the shower, there was a hole, a gateway to an impossible 1.5-kilometer tunnel, complete with a modified motorcycle on rails. This was an act of total humiliation. proving that his power went beyond iron and concrete. The king was free, but this time he was blinded by arrogance, his obsession to immortalize himself in a movie. That obsession was the final poison. He contacted producers and a Hollywood actor, Sean Penn. A secret meeting took place. Unknowingly, their every communication was being monitored. The interview became a treasure map leading authorities right to him. El Chapo, seeking immortality, had just signed the death warrant for his own freedom. With that vital information, the Marines launched Operation Black Swan on January 8, 2016 in Los Mochis. A fierce gunfight erupted. Chapo escaped again through a sewer tunnel. He surfaced, stole a car. But this time, there was nowhere left to run. Authorities anticipated his every move. His stolen car was intercepted by federal police. Without protection, Guzmán's long journey ended on a dusty roadside, captured for the third and final time. Mexico did not delay. In January 2017, El Chapo was extradited to the United States. In a federal courtroom in Brooklyn, under military-grade security, his reign of terror was laid bare. He was sentenced to life in ADX Florence, Colorado, a supermax prison, a fortress where money and tunnels could never buy him freedom. El Chapo's story is a dark study how poverty and ambition can give birth to a devil, how corruption can devour a nation, and how power built on blood always collapses under the weight of arrogance. The myth is imprisoned, but the shadow of the Sinaloa Cartel still hangs heavy. We have traced the rise and fall of one man, but is the world truly free from the fire he started? How deep have his roots spread just beneath the skin of our quiet society? That is the final forensic mystery, knowing how the crime happened, but never understanding the depth of the cruelty that ruins the soul. And the most chilling question, how many other El Chapos are waiting in the shadows, ready to take the empty throne? That is the unending burden of this chronicle. El Chapo was a product of poverty, corruption, and his own limitless ambition. In your opinion, which factor played the biggest role in creating a monster like him? The systemic corruption or his own personal cruelty? Write your analysis in the comments. Our archives still hold many other stories of darkness. To open them with us, subscribe to Underworld Archive 9 and be sure your notification bell is on. Thank you for watching.